Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The Shiur is Leiluy, Nishmat, Daniella, Shaina, Aleha, Hashalom. Bas Yehoshua, Falik, Sheyichya, Neshama should have an aliyah. Ala Yidin Ayashia should be blessed with a good year filled with success, anachas and hatzlacha in everything. It is with great pleasure that I take you away from watching the presidential debate to study with you some words of Torah tonight. For the next couple of weeks, I had the idea to study with you different concepts in Torah or different ideas. The theme that I thought of for this group of shiurim was the idea that, I'll try to explain it, the idea, the principle, the belief that Torah is comprised of many levels. Torah is comprised of body and soul. Torah is comprised, as we'll discuss, of Pshat, Remez, Drush, and Sod, and different levels of understanding, different perspectives, and different stages. The idea being that every aspect in Torah, every mitzvah, every passage, every verse, every portion, every section, every law, every element of it can be understood in many, many different levels. In general, this is referred to as body and soul. The Zohar, there's an expression in the Zohar says there is the body of Torah and there is the soul of Torah. The Zohar, in saying this, of course, refers to, when it says the body of Torah, it refers to the legal part of Torah, it refers to, so to speak, the technical part of Torah, the halachas, the Shulchan Aruch, the Gemara, etc. Then when the Zohar says the Torah also has an nishmasa, a soul, the soul of Torah, the Zohar is referring to what is called pnimius HaTorah, or the element of Sod, or what people sometimes call Kabbalah, or the mystical element of Torah, which the Zohar refers to as the soul of Torah. On a more colloquial level, people often relate to this based on the famous understanding, based on the famous teaching, that every aspect of Torah can be understood at least on 4 levels. This is called, the acronym for these 4 is called Pardes. The word Pardes means an orchard, as if to display the idea that every aspect of Torah is, an orchard that one can walk around in and almost get lost in. The word Pardes, an acronym for 4 levels of understanding. Pardes, Pshat, which means the simple, straightforward, surface understanding. Remez, which means a hint, where one thing in Torah will hint to something else. Drash, explanations, or are usually associated with Medrash. And then finally, the Samach, which is Sod, the mystical or the Kabbalistic or the spiritual elements of Torah. I should highlight that this idea that every element of Torah can be understood on all these 4 levels was once upon a time a controversial perspective. There were those who didn't see it that way, or who wanted to focus only on the legal or revealed part, or only want to focus on the hidden parts, etc. Today we have, Baruch Hashem, moved past that, and pretty much in every community, in every Torah observant and Torah studying community, all elements, all facets of learning and of understanding are welcome, and everybody, so to speak, nashes from everybody else. One of the rabbis in Los Angeles once spoke about this idea of how today you have the merging of different communities and their philosophies, and everybody seems to be adapting the advantages or the beauty of other communities' philosophy and their contribution. And he gave a very beautiful analogy for this. And I'll just share it with you briefly, because the point, again, of what I wanted to talk about over the course of these shiurim was to give different examples of where you see things in Torah that can be understood in different ways, and things that look sort of really simple or really straightforward on a simple level, can be understood from a Kabbalistic perspective, can be seen as things with great depth. And the other way around, sometimes things that are seen as spiritual and Kabbalistic have some very practical and even sometimes very technical nafkaminas and applications from this. But I want to share with you the analogy first, because it stuck with me and I really liked it. So he said there was a wealthy man, and a wealthy man had, Baruch Hashem, a large family, and he married off all his daughters, and they all brought their sons-in-law home, right? Who doesn't want to live in their wealthy father-in-law's mansion? And they had a large family, Baruch Hashem. And you know how it is? It was Baruch Hashem, a frum family. And every family had its own shtick. So one son-in-law only ate Satmar Shchita. And the other son-in-law only ate Chabad Shchita. And, the third son-in-law only ate Cholav Yisrael. And the fourth son-in-law only ate Barav, etc., etc. And so in order to accommodate and in order to make everybody feel welcome, the father-in-law, the head of the household, is doing his best to provide for everybody. But you know how it is with chumras, you should never know from such things. People dig into their chumras, and slowly but surely each family needed their own set of pots and needed their own sets of pans and needed their own burners and needed their own countertops, until each family needed its own kitchen, and eventually each family needed its own dining room, until he had a big, beautiful mansion filled with kitchens and dining rooms, and every family was preparing their own food and eating separately. And one day the wealthy man lost his money, and he was forced to sell his mansion, together with the 17 bedrooms and the 14 kitchens and the 14 dining rooms and the 14 sets of pots and pans and all the Pesach extra dishes. He was forced to sell it all. And his whole family was forced to move into a simple home where they had one kitchen and they had one dining room. And they were all forced to eat, in Yiddish we say, from the selbe top, from the same pot, which was cooked on one fire and eaten in one set of dishes. And as they're sitting around their simple table in their single dining room, the head of the household turns to his daughters and to his sons and to his sons-in-law and his daughters-in-law, and he says to them, you know, I'm very disappointed that I've lost my wealth. I'm saddened by the loss of assets. I'm very sad that I had to sell my mansion and that Nebuch were reduced to all having to live under one roof. That's the way it used to be, by the way. Eating out of one kitchen and sitting in one dining room. He said, but I'm very happy. I'm very sad over the loss of my assets, but I'm very happy that we're finally all sitting together. So I heard this rabbi explained, he said, you know, once upon a time, the Jewish nation the Jewish community had such powerful and such great leaders. Hasidic leaders, Litvish leaders, Yeshivish leaders. Each one was great enough that he needed, or he was deserving of, so to speak, his own kitchen and his own dining room. And each one would collect his students around him and his yeshivas around him, and they would follow their derech. And so while on the one hand it was amazing that the Jewish people had so many great spiritual giants, on the other hand, it created a sort of a separation between us where each one went off, so to speak, in their own way. Nowadays, we don't have those types of spiritual giants anymore. We're like the wealthy man who's lost his spiritual assets. So we all come together and we all sit and we all eat together. The little bit that we have left, we share with each other. And in that sense, without judgment, with great comfort, because why not? Because we can appreciate, we can get along, we can all eat out of the same kitchen, and nobody's resisting anymore. In that sense, there is no other option. So while we have, of course, lost the type of spiritual giants that the Jewish nation had 100, 200, 300 years ago, today we're basically all simple people, eating out of the same top. But we have the advantage that we all come together and that we all comfortably share from each other's Torah and study from each other. So I when I heard this, it resonated with me very well, because I feel like it's true, and it's a keen insight into the path that Yiddishkeit has taken today, where we are, even the Litvish, Yeshivish communities today welcome the teachings of Hasidus. The Hasidic communities welcome the teachings of the Yeshivish community, and even go figure, even a modern Orthodox shul can have a Chabad rabbi, which is a miracle no less than Kriyas Yamsuf. So again, my idea for this was to give different examples of things, passages in Torah, where you can see the same passage can be understood in many different levels and in many different ways. The first one let's start with this. The first example of this, let's start with this week, is actually the very first thing that a Jew does at the very beginning of every single day. And that is a very short prayer, a very short tefillah that we say, called Moida Ani. Many people don't know this, but the Moida Ani prayer that we begin every day with is actually not that old. It was written by one of the students of the Ari, one of the students of the Arizal, about whom a couple of years ago we had a separate course about him and his teaching and his minhagim, and how many of the minhagim of the Ari have become inculcated and common practice in all Jewish communities, sometimes unbeknown to them. And don't forget, the Ari didn't live that long ago. We're talking about roughly 400 years ago, not more than that. And just many things like Kabbalah Shabbos and Chadoidi and stuff like that, which is common practice in every, Orthodox shul in the world, even many non-Orthodox shuls in the world. It's not from the Mishnah, it's not from the Gemara, it's from the Ari. Shaina son Shaina Rabbah, which we had not too long ago. Many different things that we do, they all come from the Ari. And one of them is, well, not from the Ari himself, but from one of his students, is the tefillah that we begin every day with. Moida ani lefanecha, melech chai v'kayam, shechazarta b'nishmasi, b'chemla, rabbo menasecha. A very short prayer in which we acknowledge, we give thanks to the Almighty for returning our neshama. And we praise Hashem for his great faithfulness in us, for giving us back this neshama. And so with that, we begin our day. This tefillah, there's much to it, believe it or not. We'll go through some of the points that are involved here and try to show the depth that's involved. So let's begin on a purely technical and, if you will, halachic perspective. What is the purpose of this tefillah? Why do we say it? And what is its significance? Okay. So to begin with, in halacha it says that it is forbidden for a Jew to benefit from anything in this world that Hashem has provided us with, without, in one form or another, making a bracha. Which is why before we eat anything, we make a bracha. Before we drink anything, we make a bracha. Before we see certain beautiful things, we make a bracha. This form of bracha is called birchas hanenin. Brachas on things that Hashem has given us to derive benefit from. And again, the rule is, before one derives benefit from anything in Hashem's world, one is obligated, first of all, to make a bracha. And again, the most straightforward example for that is before eating or drinking. What is the greatest benefit? What is the most enjoyable thing that Hashem has blessed us all with in this world? What is the greatest gift of all? The greatest gift of all, my dear friends, is, of course, the gift of life. The fact that we are alive. So where is the bracha for life? Where is the bracha for being alive? Where is the bracha? Forget, before we start to eat anything, before anything specific, the very bracha on life itself, where is that bracha? And so again, for all the specific things that we have in life, the ability to see, the ability to hear, the ability to walk, the ability to stand, the ability to put on clothing, the gift of freedom, for all these things, there are specific brachas. We say them every morning. We thank Hashem for our eyesight. We thank Hashem for our ability to walk and to sit, and all these things, right? As you all know from the brachas that you make every day. But what about the bracha on life itself? What about the bracha on the very fact that we're alive? So actually, there's a bracha for that too. And the bracha is also a bracha that we make every morning. And it begins with the words, Eloi Kai, my God, Neshama shenasatabi, the soul that you have given me, that you have placed within me, Tahoirahi, it is pure, you created it, you formed it, you blew it into my nostrils, etc., etc. Baruch ato Hashem, amachazir neshamas lifkara mesim. It's a bracha that we make every day to Hashem for giving us a soul and for giving us life itself. And again, this bracha is made before we thank Hashem for the specific blessings that Hashem has blessed us with. This is a bracha on life itself. Okay. In the times of the Mishnah and in the times of the Gemara, when a person would wake up in the morning, the first thing they would do as soon as they would open their eyes is that they would say the bracha Elokai neshama shenasata bi. In the days of the Mishnah and the Gemara, this bracha was made as soon as they would open their eyes, even before they got out of bed. You wake up in the morning, Elokai neshama shenasata bi, finished. With time, the rabbi said that this bracha should not be made when people are still lying in their beds before they get up. Why not? Because one is forbidden to make a bracha in the morning before they wash their hands. Once upon a time, people were more careful with their hands. They were more conscious of the state of purity of their hands. And so when they woke up in the morning, they could make this bracha straight away. But with time, we lost that type of spiritual sensitivity, that type of consciousness of our hands. And so in our sleep, we touch parts of our body that once we've touched them, we're no longer allowed to make a bracha until we wash our hands. And so Chachamim said, this bracha of Elokai neshama that people used to say as soon as they woke up in the morning before they even got out of bed, the rabbi said no more. This bracha you make only after you've washed your hands. Once you've washed your hands and you've made the bracha on Natilas Yadayim, etc., then you're ready to make the bracha Elokai neshama shenasata bi. Okay. However, there was still a need, there was still a requirement for some sort of bracha or for some sort of acknowledgement where we can thank Hashem for the gift of life as soon as we wake up. Because again, as soon as we wake up, as soon as we come into consciousness, this is when we begin to enjoy, we begin to derive benefit from the bracha that Hashem has given us. So Moide Ani, the tefillah that we say at the beginning of the day, was crafted as a remedy to this halachic challenge. Where again, I just want to articulate this again. What was the problem? On the one hand, we wanted a Jew to be able to give thanks and to acknowledge and to praise Hashem for the gift of life from the very first moment of the day, from the very first moment of when we begin to enjoy the gift of life, from the moment they open their eyes. On the other hand, at the very first moment of consciousness, the very first moment of the day, a person is halachically not allowed to make a bracha. You have to wash your hands before you're ready to make a bracha. So a tefillah was designed, a tefillah was crafted that solved this problem. What's the solution to the problem? The solution is a tefillah, a prayer, a blessing, if you will, that does not outright explicitly have the name of Hashem. Hashem's name is not mentioned in the tefillah of Moed Ani. Go through it in your head. We say, Moed Ani lefanecha, I give thanks before you. Who's you? Melech Chai v'Kayim, the king who is alive and enduring. Shechazarta b'nishmasi, for returning to me, my soul, b'chemla, with graciousness. Rabba manasecha, great is your faithfulness, great is your belief. We're clearly referring to Hashem. We're clearly talking to Hashem. We're clearly praising and acknowledging and giving thanks to Hashem for giving us back our soul. Beautiful. But without saying Hashem's name. Hashem's name is not mentioned. This way, the tefillah can be said as soon as the person wakes up in the morning, even before they wash their hands. So we can thank Hashem for the gift of life. We can express gratitude to Hashem for the gift of life. From the very first moment we come into consciousness, without running into any halachic problems, we haven't washed our hands. Once we wash our hands, and we begin our day, and we get dressed, and we are ready to daven to Hashem properly, then we open up a siddur. Now we're ready to say the proper brachas. Now we offer up an additional bracha to Hashem of Elokai neshama. Once again, thanking Hashem for giving us our neshama. Why do we say the bracha again? Because now that we've washed our hands, we can now make the proper bracha with Hashem's name. Baruch atah Hashem hamachzir neshamas lifgara mesim. But again, this time, although we're thanking Hashem for the same thing, for giving us back our neshama, this is the real bracha. This is the actual Baruch atah Hashem. Hashem's name is now mentioned. We're now ready to say it. But it's not the first time we're thanking Hashem because it's not because it's not the first time we're getting to benefit from this particular bracha. And then, of course, together with that comes all the other brachas that we make. A bracha for our physical health, Asher Yotzar, a bracha for our eyesight, a bracha for our clothing, a bracha for our shoes, a bracha for all the things that Hashem has blessed us with in this world. So again, on the first level, on a halachic level, Moida'ani, the tefillah Moida'ani, was crafted for a Jew to be able to express their gratitude to Hashem for the gift of life from the very first moment of the day without saying Hashem's name. So this can be done even before a person washes their hands. Before I go on, I want to make a very obvious observation here, but one that should be articulated anyways. It has been said correctly that the secret to happiness in life is gratitude. If you want to experience happiness and be a happy human being, experience joy in life, one has to consciously remind themselves to have gratitude for the blessings Hashem has given us. It doesn't mean that we become oblivious, chas v'sholem, to our own pain, or chas v'sholem to someone else's pain, but it does mean that we take the time to acknowledge and to have gratitude for the gifts Hashem has given us. It's important to take a moment to absorb how far the rabbis took this point, how important it was, this idea of gratitude. That the rabbis said, we wanted a person not just to acknowledge it and not just to feel it, but to offer up a prayer, reminding themselves to be grateful to Hashem for the gift of life from the very first moment of consciousness of the day, even though at this point in time, halachically your hands are tied and you're not allowed to say a bracha because you haven't washed your hands yet. No problem. We'll design a bracha, we'll design a tefillah that can be said with impure hands. Just so that a Jew should be able to express their gratitude to Hashem. And by the way, for nothing specific, not for winning the lottery, not for one's family, not for a refrigerator, not for a roof over our head, not for nothing. All of that comes later. Just for the very essence gift of life. Baruch Hashem, I'm alive. Baruch Hashem, Hashem has given me another day. Baruch Hashem, Hashem has given me and put my soul in my body one more morning. Moidani. I'm thankful and I acknowledge this gift and this bracha from Hashem. Later on, I'll wash my hands. I'll say the bracha properly. Thank you, Hashem, for a healthy body, for a healthy soul, for all the details of life. But how about the gift of life itself? This is the first thing a Jew thanks Hashem for, the very first moment of the day. I heard a beautiful, beautiful word on this, a beautiful insight. Somebody once said, if you pay attention to the words, Moida ani lefanecha, grammatically they're a little bit strange. Moida ani means Moida is thanks or acknowledgement. Ani is I. Grammatically, it should be not moida ani, but ani moida. I give, in English, that's the way you say it. I give thanks. I have gratitude. I'm acknowledging. I am humbled. I am praising. But in Hebrew, they reverse the words. Moida ani, where first you say the word moida, which means thanks and acknowledgement, and then you say the word ani. Why? Grammatically, I don't know if it's wrong grammatically, but it definitely is grammatically strange. So somebody said this vort, and you can never get tired of quoting it. Somebody said, you know why we say moida ani and not ani moida? Because, open your hearts, my dear friends, because the rabbis, chachomim, would never institute a tefillah, would never institute something, a tefillah, a blessing or a prayer, that would require a person to open their eyes in the morning, and the first word that comes out of their mouth would be I, would be ani. The rabbis, the chachomim, would never tell a Jew, As soon as you come into consciousness, the first thing that you should do is talk about yourself. Never. There's nothing about that that's healthy. No, my friends. You don't start the first sentence of the day with the word I. You don't start the first thought of the day with being self-absorbed. You don't start gratitude. Doesn't begin with I. It doesn't begin with ani. You know what it begins with? Moida. Acknowledgement. Thanks. Humility. Who is Moida? Moida ani. Yes, it's me that's giving the thanks. It's me that's acknowledging it. It's me that's praising Hashem. Of course it's me. Ani, you do say the word ani, but it's the second word of the day, not the first. So even if it's grammatically strange, the rabbis would never tell a person, open your eyes and say, ani moida. No. Don't wake up in the morning and say, I. You know, it's like those people who, even when they give thanks, and even when they give praise, and even when they give compliments, they're still talking about themselves. It's like, wait a second. Can you see past yourself? Can you see outside of yourself? Can you see someone else? Don't be self-absorbed. And so for this reason, the tefillah is articulated, it's a beautiful word. The tefillah is articulated this way, where the first word is moida, and the second word is ani. Okay. Moving right along, there's a deeper, that's the concept of moida ani on a level of pshat, on the simple level. There's a deeper level of understanding moida ani, which is in the world of remes, which is in the world of hint, where moida ani calls upon us, the tefillah of Moed Ani calls upon us to understand our waking up in the morning as a remez, as a hint for something much greater and for something much bigger. And here's what it is. Waking up in the morning, our rabbis tell us, is a remez, is a hint to Tchias HaMesim, to the revival of the dead. The 13th principle of faith, which we spoke about, we touched upon last week, in this shiur, the idea that according to Torah we believe that ultimately in the future every Jew that ever lived will come back in the revival of the dead. Concept of Tchias HaMesim. This is hinted to in the Moed Ani prayer, and the rabbis worded it. They articulated it this way. They said, when a person sleeps, the Gemara says, when a person sleeps, sleep is 1/60th of death. Of course, that doesn't mean that sleep is death. What it means is that sleep is the closest thing we experience in this world while we are alive and healthy to death. When we wake up in the morning, we don't necessarily know how long we've slept. We don't necessarily know what happened while we slept. We sometimes remember the things that we dreamed while we were asleep. We sometimes don't. I don't know if this happens to you, but sometimes when we wake up, we don't even know where we are. We don't remember what day of the week it is. We got to start scrounging around, right? We look for the time. If you're like me, you look for your glasses. You start looking for stuff because, in a sense, it's like we've come back from the dead. And so when a Jew does say Moed Ani, we conclude the Moed Ani prayer with the words Rabo emunasecha, which means great is your faith, great is your belief. And one of the meanings of that is that when we do wake up in the morning, we're encouraged, and as we say the prayer Moed Ani, to say to ourselves, you know something? Just like Hashem has given me back my soul after a night of sleep, just like Hashem has given me back my soul after an exhausting day, and we wake up, please God, feeling refreshed and energized and ready to take on the next day. So it is after 120. May we all live long and be healthy. Hashem will once again, Rabba Munasecha, we now believe, we're encouraged to believe Rabbi Munasecha, that Hashem will do this on the grandest of scales and return our neshama to us, the neshamas of those who have parted, and bring them back in Tchias HaMesim. This is also part of what we give acknowledgement to and give thanks to in the tefillah of Moed Ani. To explain it a little bit better or a little bit deeper, we'll word it this way. Have you ever wondered why it is that Hashem made the world in such a way that a human being has to sleep? It feels like a waste of time, right? Imagine if you didn't have to sleep. Think about how much more productive we could be. Imagine if we never got tired. Or if we did get tired, all we would need to do is, take a walk or something like that. And then we'd get our energy back. Think about how much more productive we could be. According to the Rambam, a person should sleep 8 hours a night. According to Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, 6 hours a night. All right, most people need to sleep between 6 and 8 hours a night in order to function on a healthy level, in order to function in a healthy way. You're talking about between a quarter and a third of a person's lifetime sleeping, seemingly just lying there, unproductive. Why did Hashem make the world in such a way where we have to do it this way? All right, I don't know. Hashem didn't ask me, and if he did, I don't know that I would protest. But there's a beautiful insight, there's a beautiful word that's given on this. And they said, you know why Hashem made it that way? Because every time we go to sleep at night, exhausted after a day of its experiences and its challenges and its wear and tear. Life has wear and tear on us. When we go to sleep, we surrender ourselves to Hashem. Say, okay, Hashem, I've done my best with the day that you've given me, with the opportunity that you've given me. Here's my soul. It's worn out from a day of trials and tribulations. The next morning when we wake up, it's an opportunity to start fresh. It's an opportunity to start again. It's an opportunity to not be bogged down, if you will, perhaps by the failures of the day before, by the mishaps, by the things we did the day before that we wish we did differently. A new day, that process that Hashem has created, where we go to sleep tired, rest up, and wake up in the morning, please God, feeling refreshed, gives us an opportunity to reinvent ourselves, as they like to say in Hollywood, and wake up every morning and say Moed Ani and tell ourselves, I'm not necessarily the same person as I was yesterday. I may have similar challenges, but I can overcome them in a way that was different than yesterday. And that's an incredible, incredible gift and an incredible ability. Sometimes, when you're stuck in something, when you're stuck in a conversation, when you're stuck in an experience, you don't see a way out because you're locked in a certain perspective on something and you can't get a broader perspective on it. In order to truly get liberated from it, you need to be able to step out. The further you can step out, the more you can step away from it, the more you can open yourself up to a much broader perspective and see a completely different way and go off in a completely different direction. The gift that Hashem has given us, that we need to go to sleep at the end of a day, surrender our souls, wake up the next morning and start all over again, is not so that we'd like the guy in Groundhog Day, repeat the same thing again and again. It's the exact opposite. It's so that when we wake up in the morning, we tell ourselves, Moed Ani lefanecha, my soul has gone up to Hashem through the course of the night. It's come back down in the morning in a form almost of Tchias HaMesim. And now, in a sense, I am a new existence, a new being, a new creature, which is why it's appropriate to make another bracha on life. If I'm eating one apple, I can only make one bracha on it. Can't make 10 brachas on eating the same apple. So why do we make a new bracha on life every morning? Why do we say Moed Ani on it again and again? And the answer, of course, is that every day when we wake up, we're supposed to thank Hashem not for the same life we had the day before, but for the new life that Hashem has given us. It's a form of Tchias HaMesim. In fact, it's not just the person that is rejuvenated every day, but actually it's the entire world, which is why we thank Hashem for the gift of the universe once again every single day. The idea here of Moida'ani being that a person, we need to train ourselves that every day as we begin, as we wake up, as we start afresh, we can do things differently. We're not bound, we're not imprisoned by our past. We can liberate ourselves, we can be liberated people and exist in a new way. So the second level, the second piece of wisdom in the concept of Moida'ani, that a Jew says as soon as they wake up in the morning, is not that we thank Hashem for the same gift, for the same thing we had yesterday, or for the same life we've had until now. But we're able every day to wake up and say, a new day is a new life. New opportunities, new abilities. And unless we choose to go backwards, we can see our neshamas going back up and then coming back down as a new opportunity to begin life afresh. And I guess I would say that this is perhaps the second most critical and most crucial element in people's happiness in life. And that is not to stay stuck in those things which hold us back from the past. Albeit sometimes a difficult past, albeit perhaps mistakes that we made or things that happened that we wish would have never happened. In as much as possible, Hashem created us in such a way that every morning as we wake up, we can remove from ourselves the shackles of the past and say to Hashem and say to ourselves, okay, a new day is a new opportunity and a new chance at life. I can make different mistakes all over again. And if it doesn't work today, then there's always tomorrow. And this again is the deeper meaning of the tefillah of Moida'ani. Okay, I have talked myself out of my time. So we're going to call it a night on this, and we'll continue in Mitzvah Hashem next week because there's more levels and there's more understandings in the concept of Moida'ani in the first tefillah. And again, this is just one example. This is just the first tefillah of the day. So let's summarize it. The first three messages that a Jew remembers when they say Moida'ani is, number one, the gift of gratitude. To have gratitude as fast as possible, as often as possible, and to articulate it verbally. To have gratitude for the gifts Hashem has given us. Most importantly, the gift of life. That's lesson number one. Lesson number two, never to start the gratitude with I. Yes, it's me who has the gratitude, but the gratitude comes first and I come second, because there's something going on here that's bigger than me. And there's no smaller prison than being trapped in one's own ego. And in order to overcome it, you have to start with moed and not with hani. And then, of course, there is a lesson that every morning and every day we can begin afresh, we can start new. We're not bound by our past. We can thank Hashem for life every single day, again and again. It's not 1,000 brachas on the same apple, because every day life is new, and every day the world is new, and every day the opportunities are new. Every day we can fix things. We can liberate ourselves from that which we, at least in our perception, we've been stuck in the past, and begin afresh. And with that, I wish you all a wonderful evening. We'll continue with Mitzvah Hashem next week. Don't forget to say Moida'ani when you wake up in the morning, first thing in the morning, or if you've slept through this year, now would be a good time to say Moida'ani. Hashem bless us all with a good day and lots of things to have gratitude for.